Good morning, brothers and sisters at Perigian. It was great to be with you last Sunday, and I'm looking forward to being back with you in a few weeks' time. On October the 14th, we begin a great series, an invitational series. That is a series to which I encourage you to see if friends might join you. And it's called If You Could Ask God Anything. There's 3 Sunday sermons and 2 Wednesday night seminars. So the 3 Sunday sermons, these are the titles here. Where's all the evidence? Why aren't you more obvious? And hasn't science disproven you? And then in the 2 Wednesday night seminars, October 17 and October 24, there'll be time for a longer talk and then for Q&A afterwards. Now that's going to be held up at our Tawantin site at 7:15 on those 2 Wednesday evenings. And the seminar questions there addressed will be, why didn't you stop the abuse? A very important question in our time. And why don't you end all the suffering? Has anyone you know raised objections like any of these 5 before you? I'd be surprised if they haven't. I posted an article on Facebook this week. I don't know whether you saw it on our church Facebook page. It would be great if you would like our Facebook page. The 2 grabs I loved from the article says this: we must remind ourselves of the basic truth that church people go to churches and unbelievers generally don't. And the other grab was this: if unbelievers are going to join us on a Sunday morning, it isn't because they heard our band is awesome or that I, the pastor, am very relatable. It's because their friend loves church and was looking for an opportunity to invite them. I wonder if this is in any way true for you. Do you love our church? And are you regularly looking for an opportunity to invite others? But here's the question: why? Why would you invite somebody else along? Some of you will be thinking, well, that's the last thing I'm going to do. I don't know anybody who will come. They will laugh at me, or they'll ridicule me, or they'll rubbish me, or they'll isolate me, or they'll avoid me, or something else. Or you might be thinking, well, look, anyway, Mark, religion is a private thing. Why should I bother them? Most people just want to be left alone with this sort of thing, and that's what I intend to do. I intend to mind my business and they can mind theirs. Or maybe you're thinking, I should just respect whatever it is they believe and leave them to it and not try and force what I believe on them. I understand those points. And there have been times in my life when I would have reacted in exactly the same way to this issue about inviting others along. But in the end, friends, they are either just lame excuses, or what they reflect is a lack of understanding of just how good the good news is, just how good the good news really is. So we're going to spend 3 weeks, before this 3-week series, asking the question, why bother? Why put ourselves out? Why put friendships on the line? Why would we invite others to hear of Jesus? And here's where we're heading today, and this will be our outline across this and the next 2 Sundays. How clearly are you seeing? What is your response to what you're seeing? And then thirdly, how's your compassion? Or week 2, how's your reverence? Week 3, how's your love? So first of all, how clearly are you seeing? Will you have a look with me now at what this passage says? Look down with me, verses 35 and following. Jesus went through all their towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Jesus had the best news in the world to share. That God was real, that he loved his people, that the kingdom promised to King David so long ago had finally come into the world because Jesus himself had come into the world. He had news for them that there was going to be victory over enemies, that peace would reign, that justice would come, that relationships with God, with one another, with creation would be restored, and that God's people would be perfected in his image. And he must have had a great time going around all the towns and villages, proclaiming this amazing news and healing diseases and sicknesses as a sign, as a glimpse, as a promise of what was to come when the kingdom would finally come. But when Jesus saw the crowds, what did he see, we read? He saw people who were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. He saw people who were lost, confused and dazed. People who were hungry and thirsty and vulnerable and unprotected. He saw people who were easily led astray, indeed easily taken captive. People who were fearful and anxious and distracted and consumed by everything that is unimportant. He saw people chasing the latest fads, looking for satisfaction in all the wrong places. And because Jesus saw them like this, we're told he had compassion on them. Now, that's a word we explored around this time last year. It's a word that means from the bowels, that's where it had its impact. This feeling had its impact on Jesus. We might say he had a gut-wrenching compassion for them. We might say when we see something disturbing, oh, my stomach just turned. Yes, that's how Jesus reacted when he saw these crowds. And I want to ask this morning, how clearly are you seeing the crowds? At your club, at the pub, out at the restaurant, at the family gathering, down at the beach, on the bushwalk, on the cruise, on the plane. The patients you see, the clients that you deal with at work, the people you're at the movies or when you go to the theatre. Wherever you go this week, you'll be face to face with, side by side with, shoulder to shoulder with people who are harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Now, they won't necessarily look like that to you at first glance. They may come across as content and happy and successful, people who have everything together, people for whom life is good, family is good. When you ask them how they are, they'll say, oh, fine, couldn't be better. And some of them, of course, will be fine, at least at the superficial level. They won't even recognise that they are harassed and helpless because they've managed to suppress those feelings and basically live life at the most superficial level for many years. Others, though, will be keeping dark secrets and nursing unseen brokenness and hiding a longing and an aching and an emptiness that they'll probably never share with you. And friends, here's the thing. If in Australia the suicide rate, the use of drugs, the level of alcohol abuse, the dependence on antidepressants, the divorce rate, the number of times police are called to intervene in domestic violence disputes, then the reality of people's lives matches what Jesus says here. That people are harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. People today, amongst whom we live and work and socialise and play or watch sport with, are confused and dazed and thirsty and hungry and vulnerable and unprotected and easily led astray and taken captive. They are fearful and anxious and distracted, and they're consumed by everything that's unimportant, chasing the latest fads. They're looking for satisfaction in all the wrong places. How clearly are you seeing? Some friends at church shared with me recently that they lost a good friend to suicide. Everything in his life said he had everything together. A successful career and family, financially secure. His death came as a shock to everybody. Because the fact was, you see, that despite what things looked like on the exterior, he was harassed and helpless. Friends, we have to start seeing people as Jesus saw them. And know that if someone doesn't know Jesus, if they have no contact with their Creator, if they have no idea that God has made them for a relationship with Himself, if they've been suppressing the truth about God all their lives, then they need someone to point them to the shepherd. So what's your response to what you're seeing? Let's imagine that you start seeing things more clearly as Jesus saw them, seeing people more clearly as Jesus saw them. What then ought to be our response? Because when Jesus saw these shepherdless people, he was filled with compassion. And I want to ask you, do you feel any of that compassion for the harassed and helpless of our day? If you're seeing clearly, I'm sure you will. If you see people as Jesus saw them, I'm sure you will know something of Jesus' compassion. For these people are lost. They don't know where they've come from. They don't know who they are. They don't know why they're here. They don't know what the future holds. You'll see it clearly at funerals taken by celebrants. There's no hope, no comfort, no direction, no peace that the secular celebrant can give. The erroneous thought that the deceased is only in the room next door is frankly an insult. Or that we'll take a little bit of the person home with us in our hearts and so they will live on. Friends, that's a nonsense. But friends, that's only one tangible expression in the world in which we now live of the nature in which unbelievers, the life which unbelievers live every day, the helplessness that they feel. What did Jesus tell us to do? Have a look with me at verse 37. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." Isn't this brilliant? More people need to know that there's a wonderful shepherd available. So ask the Lord to send more people, to tell more people about Jesus the shepherd. That doesn't mean paid professional ministers. I think it means people like you and me, ready to care enough, who have enough gut-wrenching compassion to point people to the great shepherd. The most important answer to this very great need is to ask. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send more workers into his harvest field. Huge job, tiny workforce. So pray. He's the Lord of the harvest. He's in charge. It's his field. It's his work. It's his harvest. So ask him who is in charge, please send more workers. The great mission of sending more people out starts with prayer. And when you're seeing things clearly as Jesus sees them, then we pray. And you might just be the answer to your own prayer. Because if you begin to have a heart for the shepherdless, and therefore you begin to pray, "Lord, please send someone to tell them," you know what? Your heart then has a desire to be a person who can point people to Jesus. Wouldn't it be great if in answer to this prayer, the Lord would send many of us out, even into our own neighbourhoods, with the confidence, not arrogance, but the confidence in what we believe and why we believe it, to point people to Jesus, the shepherd. Let me ask you, do you long to say to your family, to your friends who don't know Jesus, do you long to say to them in one way or another, "Do you see the shepherd over there? Do you see him? He loves you and knows you. He wants to take care of you. In fact, he wants to meet all your needs. He longs to lead you to green pastures and quiet waters and right paths. He wants to make his presence known to you in the darkest of valleys so that you have no fear. He wants to reconcile you to your enemies so that you sit at table and feast together. He wants to pursue you with his goodness and love. He longs to take you into his presence for all eternity. Friends, do you long for your unbelieving friends and family to discover in the Lord Jesus the person you've discovered? To know him as you know him, to be known by him as he knows you. If you're seeing clearly, then you will want that for them. You will long for that for them. And you'll both pray for more workers and look for ways of telling them where they can find a shepherd like Jesus. And you may even invite them to a place where some of their very real questions will be answered. Well, finally, can I ask, how's your compassion? There are loads of things that stir up compassion within us. Images of people who have lost everything in bushfires or floods. People dealing with the impact of mass shootings. Images of refugees, both in our own nations and in those huge refugee camps overseas. Images of children malnourished and facing death. Images of families picking over dumps in third world countries as their only means of food. People who've been massively injured by burns. Images of families who have lost children in an accident. We would say that our hearts go out to those people in those situations and countless other circumstances. And if you're not moved by any of those, then we would describe you as heartless. We're helped by the images because we can begin to imagine something of their pain. But the reality of those around us who are harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd is no less real. And friends, in reality, their situation is just as more serious. We must ask the Lord to help us to see clearly the reality of all those for whom the Lord is not their shepherd. Those people who are left sadly wanting in so many ways and for so many things. Those people who have no shepherd to lead them beside quiet waters. Those people who are tremendously fearful in the valley of the shadow of death. Those people who are still at war with their enemies. Those people who do not have goodness and love following them all the days of their life. Those people who will not dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Ought not our hearts go out to such people? How's your compassion? Can I ask you this morning to lift your eyes, from yourselves and your own little worlds, which we all often inhabit, to lift your eyes out of your books or travel brochures or devices for a moment, to lift your eyes from the challenges and problems and anxieties that you're in the middle of, and to see around us people living, breathing, real people whose greatest need is to be cared for, loved by, led by, protected by, fed by Jesus, the Good Shepherd. And when we've seen clearly those harassed and helpless people, those lost and dying people, then surely we will begin to feel a gut-wrenching compassion all of our own. And when we feel that, then perhaps with a passion and a fervour we've not felt before, we'll beg the Lord of the harvest to send more workers. And perhaps we'll even beg the Lord of the harvest for the privilege of being one of those workers ourselves. And perhaps we'll beg the Lord of the harvest for a timely opportunity to invite somebody to our upcoming series. Why on earth would you bother to invite somebody to our If You Could Ask God Anything series? Because you've begun to see the reality of those around you as harassed and helpless. And from right down here, a gut-wrenching compassion is slowly but surely developing. Amen.